Today we're looking at the third season of the Hookup Plan, or originally named Plan coeur, which sounds much better really. Why would you even translate it to English or whatever? Let's look at the third season, but let's also look at the previous two seasons to get the context. The previous two seasons came out in 2018 and 2019 respectively, and this one came out yesterday, came out on the 1st of 2022, so there's more than 2 years, there's more than a 2-year gap in between them. So let's dive in. To add some detail, I didn't start watching the show until like last month, and I really had no idea that there was going to be a new season, which is probably why it was recommended to me in the first place. And the oldest, the most recent season before this one, season 2, was already 2 years old at the time, so I didn't even ever think there would be a new season, and here we are. The first two seasons, they basically tie in together as one storyline of how Elsa, our main character, ends up with Julio, the hooker that her friends set her up with. And this newer season, well, that one is basically just a standalone story on itself, where there's more attention to each of the main characters' lives, not just on Elsa and Julio in the center of attention. So let's just first talk a bit about those earlier two seasons, and then I will discuss this newer season and say if it's better or worse. Now, firstly, I do think the initial concept is really cool. I like to see how Julio or Jules, pretends to have all of these feelings, but really he's just acting. Because what makes it fun to me is that the way he acts it, he seems like a very shallow character. He seems like the most generic, like I'm watching a commercial, right? I don't relate to it, but I can very well understand why I can see that Elsa is really falling in love with the guy, and it helps me to see the humor in it, and to see how easy it is to act and manipulate someone. I really like to see that. And I like that, personally, I didn't expect that he was going to be the hooker. I knew that the premise going in, but I had no idea that it was him who was the hooker, and I only found out at the end of the episode. So I like that plot twist myself. What doesn't make sense to me is there's a plot hole, like, why would they think this is a good idea? Because it's clear that they're making Jules into this character that isn't just good looking, but also like attractive in an emotional way to Elsa. Why do you think it's a good idea to make your friend possibly fall in love with this guy? Because that's the risk you're taking. Just so she sleeps with him and gets over another guy, even though this guy is a hooker, so he doesn't want her either. It's a really dumb plan. And it could be forgiven that Charlotte thinks it's a good idea. I mean, it's her personality. She likes taking risk and creating drama. And Milou even points it out at some point. But you know what? Milou has no reason to go along with it herself. Now, if there was just 1 minute of thinking, why would Milou go along with it? Not just keep it to herself, but also eventually help pay. I mean, maybe you could have some sort of debt that Milou still owned Charlotte, and then Charlotte said, okay, you can't say anything. There are so many ways, easy ways, that you could fix this plot hole, and still they refused. Still, I think it's a really funny setup, a really interesting setup. And it really goes to show how all of these rom-com cliches, with that one perfect guy or girl for you, that's a lie, And the problem is that it diverges into rom-com cliches after that. Because Jules turns into this main character, and we're supposed to sympathize with him and hope that he wins. But he's a cliche. We were supposed to hope that he ends up with Elsa, but he and Elsa aren't on the same page at all. Like, he seems like he's like mid-30s or late 30s, and Elsa behaves like she's in her early 20s. And I'm not saying that either of those things on themselves are bad, but I don't think Jules works as a main character, and I don't think Elsa and Jules work as a couple. That's just the thing. So I'm not, it takes me out of the experience. I don't feel any positive feelings towards that relationship. And given that the second season basically tries to jam that whole point down, like they're meant to be together, I didn't really enjoy that season. The first season, well, it played around with those cliches, Sometimes you felt like, oh, they were going to end up together, but the other moment, it seemed like they weren't. And it led to some very interesting scene. Like at the end of the first season, when Elsa is going away to Buenos Aires, quote unquote, and she visits Milou and her son in the hospital. You know that she's mad at Milou. Or at least they had a fight, but she's not angry at them or anything. And she does come to visit, but neither is she really nice to them. And she basically tells that kid something that really isn't all too positive, but it's not cliche in trying to debunk happy cliches either. I think that scene was pretty fine. And, I like to see her dance in that apartment in the end of that season, because it shows that she can also, enjoy life by herself and stand her own man at that point. And it's sad that Julio does knock on her door, so it's kind of ruins every sort of plot, character development, and realizations about, dreams and reality that could have been brought to the table within that season. But still, I think that for the rest, it was a pretty good ending. Now, the second season is just really, really bad. Not only is it way less focused on humor, but there are so many plot points that don't make any semblance of sense. For instance, when this is outside the Julio and Elsa thing, when Milou and Antoine at their bachelor party within just a few seconds casually decided they're breaking up because, we're not having sex anymore, and they apparently don't feel as strong about each other anymore. If you're like 30 or something, right? If you don't realize by that point that you're not going to be madly in love with each other forever, and that getting a kid means that you will lose time to sleep together or to do romantic things with each other, then you shouldn't have a kid and you shouldn't be together. So it clouds my judgment of them as not just as a couple, but just as people, for the fact that they don't realize that. The last thing we need to discuss before going to the current season is the finale to season 2, the ending of this love story between Elsa and Julio, right? Most of it is just set at the boat at this party of the wedding, and they're having fun, right? There is no conflict. There are also no jokes, except if you think it's funny to see Romain give old people pills or something. There isn't anything going on that even remotely interests me. It is such a lazily written episode. And then there's the ending. The ending is pretty strong. Again, if I don't like the fact that Elsa and Julio end up together, because I think it's just surrealistic. I think it doesn't work. Nothing about them makes me want those two to end up together. But the way it's done is pretty fine. But everything before that, in that entire epic finale, is literally nothing happening. So that's a waste. Characters having fun does not mean that I'm having fun watching it. This brings us to the newest season. And we can see that there's been a time jump and everyone has kind of either changed his character or started a new chapter in life. And I think it works pretty well. Elsa has really turned into a more mature person and more devoted to these hobbies with being environmentalist and being spiritual, which Julio joins. So I think she and Julio have way more chemistry now, and they are way more on the same page in that regard. And talking about being on the same page, I think Charlotte and Max make a really good couple. And I also want to compliment the writers on the fact that they choose this to not be like a continuation of the first show, like the original show, with excessive focus on Elsa and Julio, but instead focus it on the main cast as a whole. Given that Julio is still kind of a shallow character despite being a better match for Elsa now, so he works better when he's demoted to this semi-main character role that he's in here. And I was just ranting about how the season 2 finale didn't really have some sort of conflict or anything funny because they thought it was good enough to just show the characters having fun. They learned from it. I think the paintball scene is really strong in the second episode, so because they incorporate the drama there very well, while also showing off the characters having actual fun, by the way. There's also more humor in this season to speak of, and the finale, if you can believe it, has a really strong format. I really like them just, like Milou and Elsa just talking at the carnival. There's also problems with this season, unfortunately. a lot of the jokes that are reaction humor really get explained. Like the character says how they feel instead of just reacting to it, which makes the joke unfunny. Matt has turned unlikable to me. I mean, I get it. He's mad that, like Max is now going with Charlotte, but he still doesn't have to act like this about it. Just look at him. I mean, Max is also treated too harshly, in my opinion, throughout this season. Like, they treat him like he's a big dick, and up until the point where they treat him like that and then just make up stuff as they go, he really doesn't do much to be treated this terribly. And the thing is, personally, I think Matt is one of the strongest characters. He's not a good guy or anything, but as a character, I think he's really strong, whereas most others are unlikable. There's this one scene where he's trying to lose his alpha male or something character, like his sexist opinions, and that he gets like hit all the time. It's really funny. Finally, I think it's dumb that Milou is the one to be pregnant again. I just personally think it's stupid to put the same character in the same situation twice, even if they respond differently now. Why do all shows do this, by the way? I have no idea. Why does the one friend who already has a kid get another one? I have no idea. Is this just to pester Elsa with the fact that she can't have a kid and then Milou is having a second one? I don't know. It's just really dumb. I've seen it on plenty of shows. But for instance, Superstore got this one right. We get to know Cheyenne as this pregnant, like trashy, poor teen girl. But after she gives birth in the season finale, we get to know her from a whole different side as just a normal character. Just one of the many employees there, and not as the teen mom or as a potential mother for a newer plot point or anything. But let's wrap things up. While the show did improve in most points and has a few dots on others in this season, there are some general complaints that permeate all seasons. Roman is the biggest one of them. Roman is a really unfunny and gross and annoying character who gets on my nerves. Every scene he has a major role in, he ruins to me. And anytime he's just there while some other character has some important moment to share, he also takes me out of the experience because he's there. I cannot take it serious anymore. Okay, this guy starts to show off with a fart joke. And if there's anything I hate, it's fart jokes. Because not only is it gross, but it's also really uncreative and really unoriginal. And then there's Antoine. I mean, I've already said it. I think that it was very immature of Antoine and Milou to just call off the wedding that quick. And I think in general, Antoine wants to be like a child, but not in an endearing way. It's just immaturity. But I don't know, there's just something else about this character that's so cringy, and like he doesn't have to be there and he's just there to fill the gap, like, I don't know. I just don't care about this character and I find him very annoying. There's also some really gross jokes, like the fart jokes and Roman and Chantal when they're eating from the same ice cream after they get dumped by the same girl. I get the joke, but it's gross. And there are some sex scenes that just drag on for way too long without really having any significance. We don't need 5 or 10 shots of the characters doing the same thing without having a plot point or a joke in it. So this season isn't as terrible as I expected, but on the other hand, they do create their own problems. And they do carry on some problems from the earlier seasons. I think that if you cut out Roman and Antoine, I would consider this a pretty decent season. But as it is, I think it's mediocre. I think it's an okay thing to put on, like when you're cleaning the house or something. It's not something that I would ever go back again, like consciously, to enjoy. As for the show as a whole, it is one of those shows that has so much potential but wastes it every step on the way. Elsa is just such a cheerful, childlike and wacky person in an adult world, kind of like SpongeBob or something. And she is really the star of this show that made me watch it past halfway the first season. The idea of her, out of all the characters, being the one to go through a 2-year heartbreak, it's really depressing, but it lends itself for amazing plot lines, okay, with amazing character development. The season 1 finale is the best episode of the entire show, because it shows that after everything she's been put through, Elsa is no longer this weak, emotionally dependent, childlike character that she was in the beginning. No, she can stand her own. She doesn't need Jules, she doesn't need Max, and she doesn't need her friends. She can dance by herself without her friends, like in the beginning, and without the guy. She can tolerate her sister and doesn't feel insecure towards her anymore. And she can just visit the hospital where Emily and Charlotte want forgiveness and punish them by just not giving them any sort of emotional response. And if this was the whole show, it would certainly be one of my favorite shows on Netflix ever. It would certainly be a competition to watch shows like 3% or Lupin. But it wasn't, and here we are. Well, that's all for now. See you in the next review.